Tom Pickering was at this dinner with me, and it was powerful. But remember, this was 5 years ago, something like 13,000 centrifuges ago, and what we're largely coming back to as a deal is something like that, but what Iran will get in terms of a non-weaponizable, potentially a right to enrich, so to speak, will be larger then. So we have wasted a good number of years in getting to something that the former president of Iran, who, if you can say they're good and dark sides, I hate clarifying this because there are thugs everywhere on both sides, I mean, including in our own country. But in that particular case, a wing of the Iranian political establishment wanted to do a deal and get us on a normalization track, and they were sending signals. Javad Zarif, or Mohammad Javad Zarif, the current foreign minister, there was a big controversy for those of you who are into Iran. In 2003, after we invaded Iraq, there was a so-called white paper that had been floated with no names on it on Iran's appetite and interest in potentially doing a deal, and they included a line item of many, many issues. This has been published now. But many believe that this was freelancing by the Swiss, that this was wishful thinking, and the Bush administration walked away from it, never did anything. And there was one conference where Javad Zarif was on a video conference. This was at the Carnegie Endowment. And it was an off-the-record conference, but parts of it were on the record. And I asked Zarif, who wrote that letter, was it real? Was it a credible proposal by the supreme leader to the U.S. government that was ignored by the U.S. government in 2003, which would have preempted all of this crap that we've gone through since? Javad Zarif said publicly, I wrote it, meaning, and he is related by marriage to Khamenei. Because nothing moved with Khatami and others, and because Ahmadinejad and the Revolutionary Guard were ascendant, Javad Zarif was put in the doghouse. He was removed from the UN. He was sent off, and we didn't hear from him for years. He was essentially put into, a black box. And so Rouhani gets elected and comes in, who's largely a former Khatami lieutenant, and brings back Javad Zarif as foreign minister. And anybody who's got a brain says, my God, how can this be happening? This is a completely different thing. But you also know they're surrounded by thugs, right-wingers, nuts that hate the United States, who have vested interests and who have commercial interests that are basically built around opposing us. And that they also see that they're themselves as ascendant in the region. They see the United States in strategic contraction, whether they're right or not, it's what they believe. And they believe that ultimately they can do deals with India, Iran, or India, Russia, China, and other players in the world that circumvent us, and they could become, not dependent on the United States, not enwrap the United States, and maintain themselves as a powerful country. That's what Rouhani is dealing with domestically. So if you go the Menendez route, and I want to put this all on Menendez, because there are a lot of crazies, I'm an independent, but there are a lot of crazies in both parties who can do stupid things, who don't think about the strategic importance and fragility of this moment. As somebody, as I think, I don't know if it was President Obama who said this to me. I want to be careful on tape of saying this, but someone near the president said, this is not another crank at the wheel on sanctions. This is a highly fragile, important moment where if we go one way, it means one track for history. If we go another, it means another track for history. So in the composite of the deal, I believe the president is right. They basically have essentially the reduction of the highly enriched uranium down to 5%. They've got transfers of uranium and plutonium out. They've got a deal on what will happen. And so they basically withdrawn and put inspectors into various places that were controversial that we weren't getting into. So Iran, for the most part, has frozen and stepped back a bit from its capacity to be right on that, going over the red line with what it could do with nuclearization or weaponization of nuclear materials. Does that mean you trust them? I don't know. I think trust takes a long time to build. The big dilemma in a country that you haven't talked to in 30 some odd years is how do you create trust with a magic wand, or do you have to go through some steps? And to a certain degree, given what we have to convince in our system, what the Rouhani and Zarif have to convince in their system, is it's going to take some doing. And I've been shocked, pleasantly, I've been critical of Obama. I've been pleasantly shocked by the momentum they had. They did this secretly, quickly, moved it fast, because they knew that so many players, Israel and others, would be working very hard, the Saudis, to try to undermine it as rapidly as possible. But they had to get a deal done and credible, freeze it, and then begin looking at, okay, what's potentially possible for the next stage? And the next stage is going to be something along the lines Khatami suggested. And that's going to be interesting to see, because that's going to leave them with some reprocessing capacity. And that's super, super controversial. Because what Netanyahu and what, I won't say the Saudis, but the Saudis haven't fully articulated what they wanted, but what they wanted was total capitulation. They wanted the crippling sanctions, and that's just not mature in today's world. So, and the likelihood that the United States would have been able to maintain the sanctions regime that it has imposed with other nations. We don't matter. You've got to have unilateral sanctions don't work. You've got to have the rest of the world with you. But after the charm offensive that Rouhani did, where they basically acknowledged the Holocaust and said he killed other people, I mean, things that were just unimaginable a year ago, there's no way that other nations, even European countries, would have maintained the sanctions regime there. So we rolled the dice at a key moment. I still think there's a high degree of failure. And the failure, if it occurs, will most likely either be nuts in Iran, who I worry a lot about Rouhani being the Yitzhak Rabin of Iran. I worry a lot about the violence and the unsettled tensions in different wings in that country. So that could kill it. Or I worry about hawks who don't understand strategic moments undermining here. So sorry to go on so long, but it was a really important question.